Time is one of your company's most precious resources. And when it comes to building successful customer experiences, you have to be on time or even ahead of time. That's where Adobe Experience Platform can help. It starts by getting a full picture of your customer before the opportunity is gone and the data is outdated. Breaking down data silos across the enterprise and centralizing your customer experience data are business critical. Every CIO knows this. Experience Platform lets you ingest, standardize, and store customer data quickly and accurately. With in-the-moment data processing, you can create an open and extensible data foundation that enables actionable real-time customer profiles and integrates with your applications to deliver experiences based on customers' real-time needs. But it doesn't stop there. With Experience Platform, your legal and privacy teams can keep on top of consent and requests from consumers under privacy regulations like GDPR and CCPA. And your data stewards can help your whole company stay on policy with customer information. Data analysts and data scientists can run queries on all stored customer data to get actionable insights. They can even use predefined machine learning models or build their own to surface predictive insights and enrich customer profiles automatically. Then, with up-to-the-second customer information from real-time customer profiles, other teams like marketing and customer support can deliver the right experiences at the right time, at scale, as the data foundation for Adobe Experience Cloud. Experience Platform is the first ever customer experience management solution for enterprises. And with it, time is finally on your side.
Welcome, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. Steve, I don't know if you can perhaps just confirm you can hear me from your end.
Yep, loud and clear.
Fantastic. Thank you. So welcome, everybody, and thank you all for joining. We are excited to have you with us this morning, and we're looking forward to sharing some thoughts with you on the future of the cookie. So just a quick introduction from my end. I've been with Adobe for 10 years. I'm one of the digital experience account executives that support a number of customers in South Africa. And at a high level, just to provide some context, what we do is we focus on helping enterprises to build and deliver relevant and personal experiences to customers, which allow the organization to engage with those customers across channels. Now, typically, this would start with a strong data foundation. And at its heart, if you think about the deprecation of the cookie, which is what we're going to be talking a bit about today, the deprecation of the cookie is really about the loss of data and the impact that this will have on organizations' ability to engage customers in relevant ways. Initially, that engagement is offsite when you're trying to engage with a customer that you maybe don't know, but it's ultimately all the way through their journey with you as a brand and their engagement with your organization. So this is what we're going to talk a little bit about today. Let me jump into the housekeeping quickly. I think it's just important to flag up front that all participants are on mute. So you will not be able to jump in during the presentation to ask a question. If you could please post your questions in the Q&A, you'll see on the slide that we've got up how to get access to that Q&A box at the bottom. So if you click on that, you can put a question in there. What we'll do, I'll monitor those as the session progresses. And as we progress through, there might be points where we'll bring up certain questions if they're relevant within context. But otherwise, what we'll do is we'll cover off those questions at the end. So let me introduce you to your speaker. Steve Ellison heads up product marketing for Adobe's audience and data platform technologies in EMEA. He's one of the members of our product marketing and evangelist teams. Now, Steve has got extensive experience in the industry. He has been focused on what we see or what we term audience-centered marketing and experience strategies for many, many years. He advises partners and clients as to how they can enable these strategies and ensure that they are able to deliver exceptional and engaging customer experiences in real time to their customers. Steve has worked with our region a few times and often gets engaged with customers, helping to position and articulate how data can enable their business and help them be more relevant to their customer base. So Steve, I'm going to hand over to you. If you could jump into the detail, and as mentioned, I'll be keeping an eye on that Q&A pod as we progress. So again, thank you to everybody, and Steve, over to you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Nicholas. So good morning, everyone. Let me first start with an apology. First thing in the morning, you don't need that picture of me glaring at you out of your screen. So apologies for that. I'll have to Photoshop or do some editing on that. But it's a pleasure to be with you here today. And this is a massive topic. You know, it's very topical. Lots of people are talking about it. And it is much bigger than people first think when you start to really look at what going cookieless is going to mean. There have been inches, if not meters, miles of media coverage about cookies going away and what this means for marketers and advertisers and everything else. And a couple of things kind of come from that. Firstly, a lot of people, their first thought is, oh, no, this is going to affect marketing and advertising departments and businesses more than anyone else. And that's wrong. Cookieless is going to fundamentally change everything that we do as a business around collecting and using data in digital channels. It's going to change the way that we do that. And actually, that is a fabulous opportunity for us. Because actually, this will enable us to truly personalize. Now, I would argue that what we've doing before, using third-party cookies and using third-party data and all that kind of stuff, is actually extremely good targeting. If we start to look now at what are we going to do without that third-party cookie, then really we're going to start to use real data about real people. And that is a tremendous opportunity for us to properly understand, know, engage with, build loyalty and trust between our customers and our brand. So I'm actually really motivated by the changes that are going to happen. And it's interesting because if you look at the typical kind of use cases for marketing and advertising, let's take that as a starting point, because whilst it doesn't just affect them, they are often the first affected by it. If you look at some of those use cases, you'll notice that the use cases themselves don't really change. The technology that underpins our ability to do that changes considerably. And that's going to be the bulk of the conversation that we're going to have today. But the actual use case doesn't change that much. Why not? Well, if we think about the use cases as being, how do I personalize? How do I get that level of targeting that I want to engage my customers? How do I find my customers and tell them about all of my good stuff? How do I reach them? And how do I find people who aren't my customers that I would like to persuade to be my customers? If we take those as the three main use cases, on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see my traffic lights of how they are affected by cookieless. And you'll notice that most of them are actually neutral or will improve. And that might not be obvious, from first out. So let's look behind that a bit. There has been a trend for the last year at least of moving from cookies towards declared IDs. The more powerful, the more important the walled gardens, the Facebooks, the Googles, the LinkedIns, all these places, the more powerful they've become, the more we are used to using an email address as our main identifier. So there has been this transition to start to use the email address as the identifier for a person, even if we're also using cookies around that. So if I've already got that email, I already know who that person is. And therefore, actually, if I get rid of cookies, I might not have a big problem afterwards. And that's why most of these are neutral or will improve. We have seen, obviously, the walled gardens using emails, but we've seen a lot of advertisers and publishers, DSPs themselves, start to create their own little walled gardens, start to collect their own first-party data. So actually, they know their customers really well. When we give our advertising or marketing message to them, they can do the lookalike modeling and the matching and everything else and start to get much better match rates. So actually, this journey has already started. And in fact, there are only two places where we're going to have to significantly change things. One of those things we're not going to be able to fix, and one of them we are going to be able to fix. We can fix programmatic. So a lot of companies these days use programmatic advertising, third-party cookies, to drive that automated process. What's this person interested in? How much am I going to pay for the advert? Match it up automatically, done, it appears in front of their eyeballs. If I don't have a third-party cookie, actually doing that targeting becomes nigh impossible, in which case programmatic is going to be impossible in its current format. But as I said, we're seeing that shift in the DSPs and the advertisers and the publishers towards the first-party data. So actually, we expect that to change and start to use declared IDs rather than the third-party cookies. The one that we don't really have a fix for is the top one there, the unrecognized traffic when they first land on your webpage. There is, and I'm sure we're all using it, an incredibly useful third-party cookie, which is the cross-domain tracking cookie. And it tells us what that person's journey has been, that session, to your site. Therefore, you've got some context. You know something about that person when they first arrive on the site. If I don't have a third-party cookie, if they are automatically deleted by the browsers, which is happening already, then that person lands on my site, they don't log in, I've got no idea who they are, I need to be really quick in trying to find out what are they interested in, what do I divine about them that I can start to use to target that person. So that becomes a really hard thing to do. Now, some of you may think that there are alternate technologies in the works that might help that. So, for example, Google's FLoC, the Federated Cohorts of Learning, is one way of getting around that problem, because that will have those FLoC membership information within the browser. But the problem with that is twofold. First of all, it's only within Chrome, it's only within Google's browser. And secondly, that data is actually really important. So when Google tried to test its FLoC earlier this year and the end of last year, they found that a lot of domains actively blocked them collecting data. Why? Because they want the data. Microsoft wants the data. Amazon wants the data. Adobe wants the data. We all want our own data of our own people. And therefore, being kind-hearted and letting Google have it all is not really going to fly. And that's one of the reasons why Google kind of pushed back for 2 years its decision about deleting cookies from the end of this year. So that gives us a bit more breathing space to try and address some of these problems. But that one, how do I get people to give me some information when they first land on my site so that I can start to personalize, is going to become one of the most important questions. And we'll run through today some of the ways that we can address that. But what does this actually mean? So, yes, they're going to get deleted. We're going to have explicit consent in order to collect information from iOS devices. And there are already noises that other devices will do this as well. So right from the start, customers are going to go, no, click, you can't have data. And once they do that, then you're locked out of information from there. If and when, and right now it's happening, the browsers start automatically deleting those cookies, then essentially what we've got is just less information for us to engage our customers. When we want to do that personalization, when we want to find the new audiences, when we want to develop the audiences we already have, there's just less information. They might not have logged on. They might not allow us to track that information. The cookie might have been deleted. So that leaves us with the problem of just less data. How do I get around that? How do we start to manage that process? And really, there are 4 ways that we can start to think about solutions for this. The first way, and I'm going to argue the best way, is by collecting first-party data. So the data that you are collecting from your own apps, your own domains, your own web properties. I can collect that information. And again, a lot of us are already doing that. Behavioral streams, click streams, user journeys, all of that really good information that tells us the real way that people are actually using our sites. So that's going to be one way, go down the first-party data route. The second way is, use the walled gardens. If you're going to do your marketing and advertising, well, just give it to Google, give it to Facebook, give it to, whoever else it might be. And whilst we have to do that to some degree, because they do have lots of audiences that we want to reach, the problem is not getting the information in there and delivering the messages into those environments. It's actually getting any information back out again so we can go, oh yeah, that campaign worked. This is how I can track the attribution. It becomes really hard to pull data back out of a walled garden, although we do have to use them. The third thing we can do is start to look at contextual advertising. Now, we've already said that people might not be bothered to log in. Even if they have an account, when they come to the site, they might not log in every time. So there might be a lot of anonymous users that we need to try and entice, trying to go fishing to entice them to come to our site or whatever it might be. So contextual advertising becomes really important. And it's quite interesting because this was one of the main ways of advertising way back, 5-10 years ago, was all about the context. Where are they? What is that site? What kind of content is on those sites? What kind of people is attracted to that content? Therefore, that's my target audience, and that's how I'm going to guess that this information might be interesting to them, and that's the basis that I'm going to do my targeting from. So contextual advertising will come back as much more important. But as we'll see later on, much more important. Plus, now we can start to marry that information with machine learning. And that actually is a really exciting opportunity that we'll talk about in a bit. The other thing we can do then is actually, if cookies are being automatically deleted, does that mean I can't use a cookie? Well, actually, you can use a cookie. Cookies will be deleted on a 24-hour basis or a 7-day basis, depending upon what browser and everything else. So that means that actually, if we are in a buying cycle with that customer and they're coming back, more than once a day, or they're coming back, within 48 hours or whatever, that cookie will still be there. We can still use it. Fantastic. So for the short-term things, we can still use a cookie. So many people are therefore tempted to go, okay, well, what's the alternative? Is there a back door? Is there a way that I can get around that deletion of the cookie? And to be honest, we really should not be doing that. One of the reasons why we're in this situation with cookieless is because no one knew what the heck was in that cookie. Consumers did not know what data was being collected. Anybody can read and write into that cookie. It was often inaccurate. It's just a bad way of doing it. So we should be focusing on first party, the walled gardens, and contextual advertising, and rebuilding that trust with the customer. That becomes a really important part of the value now of them engaging with your brand. So this brings us into a new opportunity where instead of using third-party data and being reactive, am I allowed to collect this data, finding third bits of data and then trying to apply it to users? If I start to swap now to using first-party data, then I can actually start to be much more proactive. If it's first-party data, it's likely to be more accurate. But also, I can start to anticipate now. I can predict that if it's you and this is what I know about you and this is what you've done last time, then this is what you're likely to do in the future. So I can start to anticipate and build much better engagements, much better levels of personalization than I could when I just reacted to cookie information when that person came to my website. And that's actually really important because although cookie-less and making the changes that we need to replace the cookies is painful and it will involve some expense, actually, cookies were never very good at the job that they did. There was always high wastage, high media wastage. There was always problems with the cookie data being either wrong or out of date, or the demographics were wrong with it, or something like that. Cookies were never brilliant at what they did. If I can switch that then to collecting data in real time, first-party data, observe behavior in real time, and start to use that as the basis for my understanding, then we've already got stats that show that we can actually get much higher business returns, much higher revenues, much higher purchasing, much higher subscription adoption. All of those things become easier because I'm using real information in the moment when they're engaging with me and building a better experience. So really, it now becomes all about that first party data, knowing your customers becomes the priority, but knowing your customers within the confines of the privacy laws that we have today. Yeah, there's in Europe here we have a GDPR. There are privacy laws everywhere. People are much more aware of privacy. So we need to have a strong and robust way of actually governing that data. More importantly, if that data is coming in and I've got the consent to use it and everything else, that's a lot of data potentially coming into our domain, which means that we need to start thinking about, well, how do I use machine learning to work out predictions, to work out recommendations, to work out the next best action that I might want to take with those customers. So machine learning and building those real-time insights becomes really important part of processing that data. And once I can do that, once I can collect the data in real time that's being consented and find those insights in real time, I can actually start now to create real-time customer journeys, real-time nudges that move our customers towards the kind of environment that they want. So actually going cookieless and going towards first-party data has enabled me to build a much better engagement model with those customers. I'm going to pause for a minute there. I hope this is making sense so far. I'm just going to check with Nicholas. Any comments? Am I going too fast, too slow, too English, or are we looking okay at this point?
Steve, I think we're all good. There's no questions yet. Nobody's complained about the speed, so I think we're all good.
Perfect. That's what we like. Okay, so the million-dollar question. If cookieless is going away and we're going to have less data and first party is the way to go in the future, how do we do that? What should be the strategy? What should be the thinking around the way that we actually do that? And really, there are 5 parts to that answer. And you'll notice that, this is a lot of words on this slide, so forgive that. But CDPs now become really important. Customer data platforms become really important. Why? Because they allow us to start bringing together data as people, start to bring that data together and resolve them to people. Now, what data am I talking about? Well, there are 4 main types of data. We start with an understanding of omni-channel analytics, which basically means how do your customers actually engage with you across all the channels? Because as much as we love to think everything is digital, the reality is no, everything is not digital. People walk into shops, people go into banks, they have face-to-face, they use the call centers. We still do email drops and real mail drops and stuff like that. So there are lots of different ways that our customers engage. We need to work out and bring together that information so that we can find out what is that user journey when they engage with you across all of those different channels. If it's all digital, hey, that's easy, great. If it's digital plus some, bank stuff or some in-shop stuff or some loyalty card usage or whatever it might be, we need to bring that information together so that we can start to understand where and how people are using the different engagement points. Next comes the real-time personalization and the intelligence with that. So here, really, this is about understanding what people are doing. Okay, and that becomes really important because that allows me to start to collect information in real time. And there has been huge changes in the technology now, which allows us to observe what people are doing in real time so that we can track them and we can make the engagement with them in the moment and build those experiences. So being able to gather that information in real time becomes really important. Next comes orchestrated journeys. And this is really a change. When we did cookie-based targeting and cookie-based data collection and that kind of stuff, it was usually reactive. They did something, we tried to show them something, watch how they reacted to it, and it became kind of a to and fro. They did something, we did something, they did something, we did something. And it works, but if I've now got real-time information, if I now know more about you as a person, then I can start to guide you down a better user journey. So instead of, I do something, you do something, whatever, I start to immediately go, right, I want you to be 5 steps ahead of that now. This is the piece of information I'm going to put in front of you, or this is the advert or the offer or whatever it's going to be, and start to lead them down an event-based journey, not just for that one purchase, but bearing in mind all of the information that we have with that person over their lifetime of involvement with us. Okay? And again, that's an important mind switch. The cookie was all about right here, right now. How do I sell something to you? How do I get you to subscribe or whatever it might be? Now we're thinking, okay, actually, I want to have a longer term relationship with you. I want you to buy this today, but tomorrow I want you to buy this add-on, and then I want you to take up that subscription. And then these are the pathways we want them to take. This is how we want to develop them over time. Orchestrated journeys allow us to do that. And that means that when we start to use the advertising and everything else, then actually we are using all of that information at the right time of that user journey, using the right channel that will most likely have the impact with that user, and therefore getting a much better return from the system. So actually, that's really where we start. Understand what those journeys are that people take with you on and offline, and then start to put into place a method of collecting data, streaming data that we can use to understand what's going on in that moment. And there are lots of different technology ways of doing that. For those of you who are Adobe customers, Adobe Launch, our data collection, that's essentially what that does. It allows us to collect in real time, share that information with anything that needs it, capture it all, and make it available in the moment to start building those kinds of engagements. So that's really the starting point that we need to start thinking about as we move into the cookieless world. But what kind of data are we actually talking about here? And this is where we start to mix things up a bit, because we need to have what's called the pseudonymous behavior, the behavioral streams, the click streams, because that tells me what device you're on. Right now, what are you looking at? What have you just clicked on? What have you just read? And that gives me context of why that person is on your site right here, right now. But in order to properly understand them, I also need to understand who is that person? Do I know them? Oh, it's Mike again. Hey, Mike's doing this right here, right now, but I know that I've already sent him this campaign. I know that he already has this product. I know that he's already part of this subscription service. If I can bring that data together, it gives me a much better data set that I can start to use to build my reactions to whenever Mike appears on those sites. And again, this is where the CDP comes in. The CDP is going to be fundamental to your strategy for cookieless going forwards. So combining that data, the right here, right now, real-time collected data with the attribute data. And this, of course, is going to come from your other systems. So it's going to come from your CRM systems, your point of sale, your loyalty schemes, your call centers, any other data source where they interact so that you get the big picture of those people. So that's great if you know who that person is. But what about those people that we don't know? Those people that I said either can't be bothered to log in every single time, or who have refused information, just turned up on your site and you've got no idea where to start with them. So before we were looking at, kind of buying in third-party data through those cookies, using that cross-domain cookie in order to work out who they are. We might then be doing rules-based segmentation. If they do that and they're in this location and the third-party data says this about them, then they are in this segment, and that's how I'm going to target. And we're going to put in front of them, sign up, and here's the information that you need to put in order to sign up and create an account for our services so that we can engage you better. And yes, that works. But we're now going to have better ways of doing that. If I can start to recognize in real time what you're doing, okay, within 5 seconds, working out, okay, this is what you're interested in, this is what's most likely to work, this is what everyone else who looks like you has already done, bang, there's your piece of information, then that's going to allow me to engage them far better and far more interestingly from their point of view so that they stay longer, read more, and then eventually, will become a customer, hopefully. It also means that I can start to amalgamate all of that data that I'm collecting from all of these anonymous users together and use my machine learning to start going, okay, well, this person has arrived. He looks like this group, and therefore that's what I'm going to target them. But all the time working out the individual's likelihood to do something, likelihood to click, likelihood to whatever. And the more interactions, the better that algorithm gets, and the more accurate those predictions become. And that becomes a great way of enticing them in to becoming a customer. And becoming a customer is actually going to become much more sophisticated than it is at the moment. The big question for everyone is, how do I get people to sign up? And one of the worst things you can do is slap a big form in front of them going, right, fill out all this information about life, the universe, and everything in order to create an account. And everyone sits there and goes, why the heck do you need this information? No, I can't be bothered, and leaves. We're seeing now people start to do a drip approach to collecting that data. Want to sign up for a new account? Hey, just give me your email address and your first name. You want to do something else? Hey, add in your surname and where you live. You want to do something else? Hey, now I'm going to need to have your address, and slowly over time building up that information. It doesn't need to be all collected at once. And a lot of people are now realizing that actually that drip approach might be more interesting. And it depends very much on your business. Financial services have got a lot of legal obligations to give you the right information at the right time. So yeah, they are going to have to put and ask for much more information upfront when you create an account, because that keeps them safe within the legal environment that they're with. Retail stores, they don't need that information upfront. They can leave that information right to the last minute when someone is paying, and then go, hey, want to save those details? Just give me your email address. So again, depending upon your industry, how you do that will change. But it all boils down to this idea about being able to start to identify who that person is. So we're going to have app IDs. We're going to have page IDs. We're going to have cookie IDs. We're going to have EC IDs from Adobe. We're going to have telephone numbers. There are going to be loads of identities. If I can start to bring those together and map those, then that's going to enable me to work out, hey, ID 123, telephone number 456, ECID 10, 11, 12, they're all Steve Allison. And therefore now I can start to understand through all of those different applications and channels, doesn't matter what the ID is, I can go, hey, this is Steve. Now I know what to do with him. So identity becomes a really important part of the process. And it's a really important part of a proper CDP. So you get this identity service, which is constantly going around going, hey, this ID matches this ID or whatever. And that works for unknown as well as the known people. So you might not know who the person is, but you might know that, hey, this iPhone keeps turning up and it keeps looking at this kind of content. So you build a profile on the iPhone. And then later they go, oh, that iPhone actually now wants to be sent some information. They're now going to input an email address. It's Steve Allison. So now I can take all of that unknown data and all of Steve Allison's profile, and I can bring it together, unite it. I've lost none of the history, and I've now got a much better view of that person. So the profile becomes really important. When I talk about the opportunities that cookieless is going to bring for us, I'm mostly talking about this profile, okay? Because this profile becomes the source of insight, the source of understanding, the source of orchestration to make sure that you're having a single conversation with that person on every channel, always. So how does a typical profile work? So there are two kind of sides to this. On the left-hand side, you've got information about the person. You've got information about the devices that they use. You might even have information about B2B relationships. So again, we don't see a difference between whether you're engaging someone as a person, a household, or a B2B relationship. It's all just data resolved to a person with the rules around what we need to do for that particular person. We can manage all of that within the profile. On the right-hand side is probably the more interesting bit, what we call experience events. And this is everything we do with you, the customer, and everything the customer does with us across every channel. So this is now a time series. I now know in time, over time, what I've done with that person across every channel that I want. And that really is what makes that big difference. I'm no longer talking about, hey, you're interested in cars, you're male interested in sports cars, you're living in this region. I've no longer got kind of narrow little segments like that. I've now got a profile which allows me to go down into the exact detail of when and where and what you did in order to create much better personalization and engagement. And this is where this whole thing about the DMP to CDP migration comes into play. Traditionally, we used a DMP, a data management platform, audience manager in Adobe's case. And the data management platform used cookies. It used third-party cookies, third-party data, yes, and first-party data. But it used that and was used for doing segmentation and then targeting someone. And then the CDP was all about known data, known profiles, CRM information. Actually, when you start to look at it, there's no real difference in those use cases. Acquire customers, convert customers, show them new products, acquire them, convert them. It's a cycle. So therefore, we, Adobe, and the rest of the industry is starting to merge CDP and DMP technologies together, because that gives us that ability to understand people or as cookies or as telephone numbers or as whatever, but start to resolve that information. So I can now collect information from anywhere. I can bring it in and resolve it to a person and activate that person in real time. Fantastic. This now gives me the opportunity for all channels to use that single profile to properly coordinate what they do with that person. But not just coordinate it, they know about the governance of that data. We can map in things like consent. What has this person consented for when they allowed me to use this data? And then make sure that downstream, none of that data gets used in a way that is against that governance policy. And also then allows me to work out, if I'm building audiences and data sets and sharing this information, making sure I don't leak data, making sure that I can always trace where that data came from and prove that I have not broken any laws or whatever. And this is all about, A, not breaking any laws, because that's important, but B, rebuilding that trust between you and the consumer. So when you go, hey, this person's now at the airport and I've just seen that their flight's delayed from partner data, I can now send them an instant message that says, hey, £10 off your cup of coffee and a sandwich at the coffee bar, or here's your privileged access into the lounge. Whatever it might be, you can use that data knowing that it has been consented and you're secure in the knowledge that it's appropriate use of the data. It also, of course, means that now, if everything is tying together and coming into this profile, each business system, your email system, your personalization engines, your staff in the shop, the bank teller in the bank, whoever it's going to be, can all pull and read and write into that same profile. So now I have a single conversation with that user. Because I'm using the first party data, because it's being stored, because it's a time series, I can start to make sure that I'm having one conversation across all the different channels. And importantly, with all of that data, as I've said, machine learning becomes an important part of this. This profile becomes the perfect food, if you like, for machine learning. And we're going to have to use machine learning in order to properly understand what's going on. So things like propensity modeling. What is your likelihood to do this, to do that, either as a person or as a segment? So again, allowing us to drill from segment level into the personal level whenever we want. Attribution becomes an interesting one. Attribution today relies heavily on cookies and beacons being fired. And as we know, we're also seeing a lot of the vendors blocking those beacons from being fired. So how are we going to work out the attribution? How do I work out whether this marketing campaign actually worked, whether this offer actually worked? Well, machine learning can do that for us. It can run through and work out, even for anonymous users, what events happened, what led to this being higher or lower, how is the attribution actually mapped? So this is a great way of allowing us to still use attribution and yet not have to worry about using third-party cookies or beacons or stuff anymore. We can use the first-party data that we're collecting. And the last part of it is all about what we call the journey. If I know who you are, and I know your propensity to open an email, and I know which email is going to work best for my attribution scores, when should I send you that email? When should I phone you up? When should I actually engage with you? What is the best time to do that? And again, machine learning can work that out. When is the best time for people to actually to receive the offers that you want? And that's interesting because that allows us then to either act in the moment, in real time, start to give them that offer. Or maybe for that person, you should send that offer on Sunday morning when they're sitting in bed, having a coffee, catching up on the week. Machine learning can work that out for us. And you'll notice that on the left-hand side, as I've been going through this, all of that information, the AI and machine learning calculation, is being written back into the actual profile. So that means that I can now start to just look up that information. What is their churn likelihood? It's there. It's in my profile. I can look it up in real time, no problem. What is their propensity to do something? What is the best time to send? I can start to use that to make better decisions, but also to make better segmentation. So I can now say, okay, find me everyone who lives in this area and who has expressed an interest in this and who already have this kind of subscription and who have a likelihood of opening this email I'm about to send them of over 80%. You can start to build much more sophisticated segmentation around that, and it's time aware. So now we can start to build segments that actually are time aware, are linear, so that you can go, if you qualify for this and then you do something else, then you qualify for this new thing and you don't become qualified for the old one anymore. So you can start to progress people through those segments and start to develop them as customers. Again, you couldn't do that using a DMP and using third-party cookies, okay? Because third-party cookie had no concept of time. DMPs have no concept of time. CDPs do have a concept, and it has this richer data set. So it becomes a much more useful way of looking at your customers, not just for the marketing and advertising, but for account development, for servicing, for all the other developments of the organization. So one of the important things to bear in mind is, a CDP is going to become a CDP is going to become fundamental to the way that you solve the cookieless problem. But that CDP should not be a department CDP. It should be something capable of growing into an enterprise CDP so that the entire business can read and write and understand what's going on with that customer, so that, as I said, it's not just a right here, right now, what am I trying to sell to them? It's about the long-term development and the happiness of that customer and their engagement with you, because that leads to loyalty. Loyalty leads to better revenues. We know all of this stuff. We've seen the reports and the apps that kind of allow us to prove that. So cookieless actually is a fabulous opportunity for us. Yes, there's going to be some pain. Yes, we need to change our underlying technology. We need to rewrite the way that we collect data and make that based around first-party data. Collect our own data. And here's something else that we think is going to happen. Your first-party data is going to become really important to you. We said that, fantastic. But your partners are now going to become fabulously important as well. So this is second-party data. We predict that there will be a massive increase in the amount of second-party data. If you can share data with your partners, and when someone moves from one site to another site, from your partner site to your site, or from your site to your partner site, if you can pass information, then essentially we are recreating a kind of cross-domain tracking information. Okay, obviously you need consent for that. But then again, almost every business I talk to has already got in their terms and conditions, do you consent to this information? We will use it for blah, 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 and we will use it with our trusted partners. So most people have already got that in their terms and conditions. So we can start now to build much stronger second-party data exchanges and start to use that data to give us a much more rounded view of that customer. So knowing your customer through your first-party data and your partner's first-party, your second-party data, becomes really important. But not just knowing your customer, resolving that identity to a person. So yes, we will collect thousands of unknown profiles, which hopefully will convert into known profiles where we can put a name and a face to that particular data set. But always think about your data as resolving back into people. Data doesn't matter, people matter. They're the ones that have the money, they're the ones that we're trying to engage, they're the ones with the interest that we're trying to put in front of them. So resolving that data into people and knowing and understanding them becomes really important. If I know them as people, if I know them as aggregates, that everybody who looks like that does this kind of thing or is interested in this or typically follows this kind of route through my web pages, then that allows me to choose the right engagement strategy for them. Should I use the call center? Should I push them to the application? Should I give them this offer on a Tuesday instead of on a Friday? We can work out and choose the right strategy because we have that data constantly being updated and ratified by the first-party data collection, and that helps us to guide people down the proper customer journeys that we want them to have. Stop thinking about the one success, not just one sale. It's a continuous thing. So how do I guide people to that sale and beyond? And that's all about creating those customer journeys, creating the brand loyalty. And if we can do that, we've already seen, you've probably seen from Adobe, we have a number of reports which say that if we can get that right, talk to them as people, guide them in the right place, not just a one-off sale, but to have that relationship, we will have higher rates of subscription. We will have higher revenues. The results will follow. Okay? So this is a fabulous opportunity that we see. I'm now going to open up and see if there are any questions that have come through from the chat pod. Nicholas, anything through yet? Or if anyone has any questions, please type into the chat pod now, and we'll do our best to get them answered.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. So yes, I think if there's any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat pod or into the Q&A box that will pop up if you hit the Q&A button. Steve, just a couple of questions that I think might be worth covering off. The first one, if a customer has a DMP today, any thoughts or comments or suggestions on how they move from that DMP, which, as we know, tends to be more focused on the cookie and third-party data, to this CDP-based strategy that you've been covering off in the session?
Yeah, there's no easy answer to that. It depends a lot on what kind of DMP that they have. We've seen a lot of DMPs have started to embrace declared identities. So, for example, Adobe's Audience Manager for the last 2 or 3 years has had something called people-based destinations, which allows you to use an email address as the identifier and therefore get an exact one-to-one match in Google and Facebook and everywhere else. So some of the other DMPs have started that already, and that kind of gives you a halfway ground. But really, it's about starting to switch over now into a CDP. At Adobe, we have a migration path from CDPs to the DMPs to the CDP, but you'll have to check what the other vendors do. DMPs don't have a profile, and that's the crucial difference. They don't have a profile, so you can't store information about that person in the DMP and therefore activate that in real time. All you can do is store is a member of this segment and that segment and whatever. And yes, that can be useful, but it's not going to be useful in the long run. So we do need to think about migrating that information into a CDP.
All right, fantastic. A second question, what are your thoughts on how organizations, so enterprises and or the agencies that work with them, what are your thoughts on how they put the team together that will set this all up? How do they go about starting this initiative?
Yeah, that's a really important question, because actually, this isn't about technology. CDPs typically will do that job for you and will do all that technical stuff that I've mentioned. The most important thing is a cross-departmental team, business people plus IT, plus someone at board level who can, make things happen, need to come together to work out, first of all, what data do I need? There has been a frenzy of collecting data from customers over the last few years. Much of it, to be honest, we probably didn't need to collect. Okay? Now we need to be much more careful about what we collect. So that's why we need to have IT and the business come together and say, okay, what information have we got? What information do we need? What's the journey we want to take someone on? And from that, then make your decisions about what technology is going to be best to fulfill that. So actually, this is a business problem more than a technology problem. Technology is out there. We've got that. But the business needs to work out in a group fashion between IT and the business teams, what data, what are the user journeys, what is the outcome that we want, and progress from there into their strategy for going cookieless.
All right, fantastic. And unless something else pops up, there's one final question. So this is around customer trust, right? How do we get customers to trust us with their data so that we can do this?
Yeah, it's a tricky thing. We spent so long collecting data and not really allowing our customers to understand everything that we're collecting and everything that we know about them, that there is deep distrust on the kind of the consumer's behalf. It comes down to two things. It comes down to the way that you ask and the data that you collect. So this idea about, do you trickle collect information as and when it becomes important to know that helps with the confidence that you're only asking for information that you're actually using at that point. And then that's one way of addressing it. The other way is if you're asking for data in order to make better personalization and better offers and everything else, then make sure that actually the people who have signed up have better offers, better content, better whatever it is that you said they're going to get. Make sure that actually there is a differentiation between the free stuff, non-signed up stuff, and the stuff where they have signed up. Make that a real thing, a tangible thing. You signed up, therefore you get 15% off instead of 10% off, or whatever it might be. Make it real, because that's the way that slowly we can build up that trust over time and start to rebalance it. And we do see a lot of brands actually looking at trust as being a major brand differentiator for them. Either saying, we will never share your data with everyone else. I think actually is going a bit far, because most people will need to share data with a few good partners. Not everybody. There'll never be a third-party marketplace for data again. So, select your partners with care. Give them something back that's real for the data that they're giving you.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Steve. Right, so I think, let me just do a quick check again. Yeah, that seems to be everything on our end. So yeah, thank you for taking us through that content. I think it was quite informative, and I hope it was valuable and of interest for everybody on the call. So as mentioned, we have recorded the session. We will share the detail with you after the event. Feel free to pass it on to others that you think might benefit from it. That's absolutely not a problem. We will be putting up a short poll just after the event. So if you wouldn't mind completing that, it's not a lot of questions, just gives us a little bit of insights and feedback to make sure that the future events that we run meet your requirements. And one final point, I think, from my end, the move away from cookies is a large task. Many organizations started this journey originally when Google first announced their plans to deprecate cookies out of Chrome. And as Steve mentioned, there has been a 2-year delay that was then subsequently announced by Google. And a part of the reason for that is a realization by organizations that finding an effective way forward and then implementing that is actually a big job. So what I'd like to say, just as a closing comment, is regardless of the approach that you take and what you decide is the right approach for your organization, we would strongly suggest that you kick that off as soon as possible. Don't leave it for another year or 18 months. You will run out of time to get an effective solution in place to address this topic. So that's it from our side. For anyone who's interested in a further discussion on the topic or anything data related, anything related to customer experience, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Our details will be included in the information that we send through to you. So by all means, please do reach out to us. So thank you once again to everybody for joining. And we do look forward to some further engagement with all of you in the future.
Thanks all.